Welcome to Healing with the Diamonds podcast. This show features Larry and Kaylin Diamond, along with guests who are passionate about helping families heal together. Through personal stories and powerful conversations, you'll hear real-life experiences and practical tools for reclaiming health. Please note, the information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health routine. If you're enjoying Healing with the Diamonds podcast, we'd love your help spreading the word. Leaving a quick review or rating on your favorite podcast platform helps others find us and helps more families start their own healing journey. Thanks so much for listening. Now, here's today's episode.
Hello, welcome everyone. I am Larry Diamond. My amazing partner, Kaylin, is not here for this particular interview, but Kaylin and I are healing with the diamonds. And I'm super grateful to be talking to somebody that seems like I've known forever, but met like 2 or 3 weeks ago in Arizona, of all places. And she is Pam Conboy. I got that correct. And she is part of Setas Seminary.
So we say setas like lettuce because it's Americanized, but setas is proper in Spanish and it means mushrooms.
Wow. So we are here with Pam, who's been very generous with her time. We met at a wonderful, unique, amazing conference that is going to energize me for the longest time with Dr. Nasha Winters and her Metabolic Terrain Institute of Health. And everyone there was beyond amazing. All the speakers, the attendees, the sponsors, and I was so fortunate to have Pam come by one day to a table, and her energy was infectious because I had been curious about psilocybin and aware of it for years, but it's not, at least for me, it wasn't the easiest thing to pursue. And then Pam, I kind of came into my life, and I think I'm going to be forever grateful for that. So it's very connected with the whole ethos of healing with the diamonds. Mushrooms are definitely ancestral wisdom. I've been doing my own research along with communicating with Pam. I was always a fan of Terence McKenna, and he has a theory, or not a hypothesis of the stoned ape, but I'm realizing more and more that mushrooms are our ancestors. I want to find out from you, Pam, your journey to the seminary, anything you want to share about your origin story. And I don't know if you ever say mushrooms as her, HERs in capital, but your origin story and what they've meant to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really a great pleasure to talk about this whole crazy journey of starting a church, which is funny enough as it is, I'm not a terribly religious person. But my background, just real briefly, is in biology. I started my career as a clinical laboratorian. I got my training in the Air Force. Really conventional kind of upbringing. I ended up in marketing somehow, and I've done that most of my career in the larger medical space, first in conventional medicine and laboratory work, in vitro diagnostics, and then kind of made my way over to more integrative medicine. So I've worked for myself most of my career, which is real suitable. The boss is a little tough, but we understand each other. So about 3 years ago now, an old colleague of mine with a nutritional supplement, we worked together here in Reno, which is where I'm based. I hadn't seen her in a while. She's a naturopathic physician. We had lunch, and she was telling me that, recently, Pam, it's so strange. In the last year or so, I've had a bunch of people that are interested in microdosing. So, yeah, microdosing what? Psilocybin, because you can microdose other things. Oh, yeah, how's that going? It's the best medicine I've ever worked with in my life. It's astonishing. So she wasn't dispensing mushrooms, but she was helping people understand what different strains, how they might affect the person, because they definitely have different personalities. She was pairing various botanicals and functional mushrooms, non-psilocybin mushrooms, with the idea of microdosing psilocybin mushrooms, depending on what the person was trying to achieve. Because as you might know, naturopathic physicians are very well versed in plant medicine. It's a really key component of their education. So she was quite aware of which substances would have more nootropic or more sort of cognitive influencing
Interesting.
characteristics, or more adaptogenic, calming adaptogens that kind of help reset the nervous system. And all of these insights really helped her put together a supportive package for the folks that were microdosing. So she was finding that treatment resisted depression was being lifted, that, lifelong addictions to alcohol or food or tobacco, that they were being resolved. The other thing that she was finding for some folks, just, alleviating brain fog and getting more creative in their professional endeavors, as well as processing trauma. Really, she was sold. I mean, I could see it on her face, and I'm thinking now, why in the hell can't people have access to mushrooms? I honestly didn't know how much research at that time from that conversation, how much research had been going on in the previous 15 years. I wasn't even really aware of the legal status of psilocybin containing mushrooms. So I went on a big market research venture. And what I found was that the research was incredibly compelling in the last 15, 20 years. So even though psilocybin containing mushrooms and all of the psychedelics still sit in Schedule 1, through that's classification through the FDA, that alleges that that substance has very little to no therapeutic value and a high propensity of addiction. And we've known that that's not the case since the 60s. But they just bucketed all of the psychedelics into this category. But FDA, organization that classified these mushrooms as being Schedule 1, also in 2018 and 19 classified them as breakthrough therapy for depression. So that really opened the doors to more research. Since then, virtually every university of any note in the United States has a psychedelic lab. The studies are looking at so mood disorders, trauma processing, PTSD in particular, ADHD, and a variety of neurological conditions from Alzheimer's disease to Parkinson's disease and traumatic brain injury. And it's really all very promising. I don't know if you or your listeners really understand, but there are the power of these mushrooms are amazing. So they have their mechanisms. I kind of bucket into 3 categories, right? So one, they increase brain-derived neurotropic factor in the brain. So this is something that we have as infants, a whole lot of it, and then another big burst when you're a teenager, and then it kind of wanes over time as you get older. And what BDNF does is increase neuroplasticity. It actually grows new brain cells. It also grows new synapses, so gaps and dendrites, so the connections between brain cells. So you're actually opening new pathways of interpretation in your brain in a very natural ground-up method. It also reduces inflammation, both in the brain and the body. So as we all probably know, low-level inflammation is directly associated with every chronic disease that we have as humans, from diabetes to depression, really, and everything in between. So you're really right-sizing your immune response, and you're reducing the inflammation in the brain that is associated with Alzheimer's disease. It is associated with depression and anxiety and all of those things. So again, you're getting to root cause. And then the third big sort of bucket of mechanisms is right-sizing your neurotransmitters. So psilocybin, or its active metabolite psilocin, is primarily a serotonergic agent, so it works on serotonin mostly. But unlike SSRIs like Prozac and all that category of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, instead of blocking reuptake, which is not a natural thing, psilocybin is an agonist. So it's actually getting your body to make more serotonin in a very natural way using the neurotransmitters that God gave us. It also works on dopamine. So dopamine is our primarily our reward transmitter. So folks that struggle with addiction have their wiring of the neurotransmitter dopamine, that cycle is completely misaligned. And they're unable to get a hold of their addiction because their reward system is off. So psilocybin helps correct that, and that's one of the big reasons why it's so effective with addiction. And then the last big bucket there is it impacts glutamate. So that's a more energizing neurotransmitter. That's really the explanation of why it helps with cognitive clarity. And it also increases your BDNF. So going back to that cycle, you're actually growing your brain, reducing inflammation, and right pathing your neurotransmitters with a natural occurring substance, mushroom. So yeah, it's really magical. We really understand the mechanisms pretty well at this point. The research is really strong. So, okay, I'm sold. Now, what about the legal status?
Mm.
I was aware that there were ayahuasca churches. I didn't know how they could work because ayahuasca, also a psychedelic, also Schedule 1. So there is a whole bar association of attorneys that work with psychedelic issues, which is incredible because I spent a whole bunch of time and money talking to those people. So essentially, the way the ayahuasca churches were working is that in 1993, way back in 93, the federal government, so this covers all of the United States, passed a law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And the purpose of that law was to protect indigenous peoples who have been using these types of medicines, entheogens, or plant-based psychedelic medicines, in sincere spiritual practice or, in ceremony and as rites of passage. It's been a long-standing use, and the government prior to that, depending on who was leading the government and what attitude they have, they'd go and harass these people from time to time. So this Religious Freedom Restoration Act stopped all of that. It said that if you're using entheogenic plants, doesn't specify what plant. In sincere spiritual practice, again, it doesn't specify what the practice is, just that it's being done sincere spiritual use, then that's considered protected use by the government because we are still a government that supports religious freedom. So, see, I built a church. So we are a 501c. We're a federally recognized church. We do not speak to any specific deity. We really teach to naturopathic practices. So whole mind, body, spirit integration. We use psilocybin as our sacrament. So we use the church type of language because we really want to enforce that we're doing this in a sincere way. And then we provide free education. Really, our sermons, we call it science and sermon, right? We try to teach people of different kinds of integrative practices that keep you on track, especially if you're using this sacrament. So that might be meditation or breath, different kinds of breath work or cold and hot therapy or grounding or whatever it might be. And we will do sort of more of a didactic lecture. So give you all the science behind why you should be interested in doing this particular practice. And then more experiential. So we try to teach people that you don't have to go to an ashram. You don't have to lock yourself away for a week. You can do meditation just a few minutes every day or even a few times a week and really make a difference for yourself. It can all be very practical. So we've been in operation for about a year and a half. So March will be our 2-year anniversary. We're based here in Reno. The church is my property. I live here on 14 acres. And we do big dose ceremonies, so not just the microdosing that we offer. And I can go through that, and I have my show and tell if you'd like. But
Yeah,
we do both
awesome.
microdosing and macro, and wow, it really makes an enormous difference in people's lives.
That I cannot tell you, I'm so thankful that you put in all the effort and work that you did, because even in these last few weeks, it's already profoundly affecting me. And if anyone's watching this on video rather than a podcast, I was smiling during Pam's talk because I am, for what it's worth with genetic testing, but also experientiality. Apparently, I have the genetic profile, and genes are anything but destiny to produce naturally less BDNF. So I found that, ironically, today is the coldest day since last winter. And cold, I live in central Texas, so doesn't get as cold as I would like, but be careful what you wish for. But I underdress intentionally and go out and spend long periods of time. We can also do cold showers. I actually prefer being in the cold, and that does raise my BDNF. And what was interesting is I've had this clarity and focus that's similar to cold exposure. So that was, and what's also really cool is I didn't know those mechanisms. And I've been microdosing now for about 3 weeks. I'm not in right around 3 weeks. And I've experienced a lot of what you described in theory. I'm living in practice. And you use the word practice and spiritual, and I am a brethren, I don't know the correct term, of your church. So I am, and it is very much a significant and beloved spiritual practice. And the word practice. So I've been delving down 3 weeks, not 3 years, and I've come across great podcasts. And I was wondering, and it is a practice, it's not pill popping. These are in the forms that I've gotten from you, at least in microdosing. They are in pill form. I can say, at least for me, I can't speak to anyone else. There is zero trip, like zero. Like, at least to me at the conference, I tried, like, there was free organic wine. I only got through half the thing, and that was way more of a trip. I have felt zero trip. I can drive right after. It is anything but trippy. And I've heard that's a reason for microdosing. But I've heard from some of these other interviews, and there's never just one way, right? There's each of our ways. It's working great for me, but I've been on this mind, body, and now spirit and soul journey for quite a while. So the mushrooms are just loving me. It's been just spectacular. If people are not yet, have you seen it also work for people at the beginning of their healing journey, before, say, they're doing grounding, before they've done any diet changes? Is there anyone who shouldn't be doing it? And can it be a leader that people then find a proper human diet and movement and sun and grounding? Can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. It can be a catalyst. So, what I would say is that each individual comes to the mushroom when the time is right. That might sound a little less, a little woo-woo, maybe. That's not my intention. It truly is. You need to be of the proper mind, meaning, okay, I understand that this could help. I would like to give it a try and have a sincere intention to see what happens. You cannot be it's not like going to a doctor and your doctor says you must take this medication because your blood pressure is too high. I don't care if you have side effects, you must take it. This is not the case with mushrooms. So just to back up 1 second to explain a little bit how the microdosing works. So we have 3 different kind of flavors of microdosing, depending on what you're trying to achieve with the microdose. So because my partner and I both worked in professional nutritional supplements, we know where to source things. We know where to do the third-party testing. Everything is encapsulated, as you mentioned. but it's all done at an FDA certified facility here locally in Reno, which was a blessing from the universe. There's no way around. There's no way that I should have been able to do this in the highest quality facility that's available to a supplement manufacturer. So these things are primo. The white bottom is the one that you take every single day. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, we have the 3 flavors. One we call calm. That's more for the person that is very anxious, has a very stressful lifestyle, has trouble sleeping. So in the calm pairing, the daily supplement, which is not psychedelic at all, not psilocybin containing, that's really calming adaptogens to help you reset your stress point and relax and have a good night's sleep. The second one is called Focus. So that is more the daily supplement that you take is more nootropic. So we're talking BDNF manufacture, more clarity. It's very much more cognitively and energizing, the Focus pairing. And we have probably several dozen patients referred from a neurologist that are dementia patients, early onset Alzheimer, and they do great on the Focus. The third one is introspection, which is this one, and that's really more for this sort of deep dive, soul searching, wound healing, trauma processing. So your daily is more heart opening and allows you to kind of dig deeper. The green one is the one with psilocybin. It's a 200 milligram dose, and that's consistent for the 3 different pairings.
So zero point 0.2
zero point 0.2
grams.
grams, yeah.
Yep, yep.
So, and just for clarification for folks who may not know, microdosing is typically between 50 and 500 milligrams, or 0.05 to 0.5. It depends on the human, and it's not weight associated. So it doesn't matter how big you are. It's really about metabolic efficiency and your own sensitivities. So some people, a lower dose works better for them than the 200, but in our experience, I would say 97% plus do really well on 200 milligrams. And it is designed to be non-psychedelic. You
It's
should be able
completely,
to
yeah, I can.
function
Not that
complete.
I have, I'll tell you I had one in college at Berkeley, of course, and in the UC hiking club, and I was at a party. Those are magic brownies. I'm like, haha, they're just brownies. So
Oops.
they're like, so they were just watching me. Yeah, at that time, I'm grain free now. But, it turned out to be a good trip, but it was definitely a trip. So that was my one and only trip. And there's been nothing like that in the 3 weeks.
So we have a few people that it feels a little strong to them, and they can address that in a couple of ways. Strong meaning I feel something, I feel a little something, and I don't really want to feel anything. That's the very small minority, and we approach it in 2 different ways. We can have them just use half a capsule, put half a capsule of the
Hmm.
powder in tea, and your body acclimates, and then you can sort of ease your way up to a full capsule, or you take it at night. And take it at night. Psilocybin is quite relaxing, and you can sleep through any sort of subtle shift, but it's
Ah,
really the minority. And then, so I just wanted to kind of explain what
sure.
that looks like.
Sorry
So
to
you,
interrupt. I just
oh, no,
wanted
no,
to
no.
confirm. I'm glad that I've been taking it for 3 weeks, that I've felt zero trip.
Yeah, and that's the intention. So it's doing all of its magical mechanisms in the background, but it's not interfering with your daily life activities. So you take that non-psilocybin every day, then the psilocybin you take like 3 times a week. It's pulsing like that because you want to give your brain some time to adjust to the new
Hmm.
neurons that you're making. You don't want to build up tolerance. And all microdosing protocols are that way. So, going back to your original question, because I just wanted to kind of give you a background of how it works. A lot of people do have some fear. I mean, I grew up in the age of your brain on drugs, right? So, there is this kind of hangover that any drug, anything classified as a drug, anything that could alter you is a bad thing. But in microdose, there is no alteration. We can talk about macro later, but the person has to kind of be ready for it.
Mm.
And you can be nervous, but the idea is that you want to work in harmony with these mushrooms rather than fighting against it, because that's just not going to work. You have to be open to it. So some individuals, they will start just with the white functional mushroom botanical blend, just this one.
Hmm.
And okay, let me ease my way into that. And those are available on so there's nothing in there that is in any way a Schedule 1. And then maybe, okay, I feel a little bit better. This is kind of cool. I think I'm ready to try this. Are you sure it's not psychedelic? So there'll be a lot. Hesitation is okay, but you really need to be open to, okay, I'm ready to try it. Let's see how this works. And some people have already been doing mind body practices, some
Hmm.
not at all. And it
Mm.
it doesn't matter. It can be a catalyst or it can be a supportive feature to your already existing wellness program.
That's great. It sounds like the commonality between catalyst and support is the openness
It really
to
is.
approach it, the kind of the intent, not where somebody is at their journey per se.
Yes, the mushrooms will meet you wherever you are. You just have to be open to it.
The openness. That's great. Wow. So many ways to go. So I wanted some of what you were saying, and I think that and it may be my own personal circle and who I'm finding, but I've become a huge fan of Dr. Nasha's Metabolic Matters. And almost every guest she has, and just comes up naturally. And she's a great embodiment of this. And I love that you have a very scientific background. I heard the word hermetics about 14 months ago, and then and I heard it from Dr. Bruce Lipton, epigenetics. And I went to grad school with his daughter, Jennifer, and I never knew. But yeah, just weird way the universe
Oh, yeah.
works. So since that time, I just, everyone, it's too much work for me to be anybody but myself. So I call what I am now scientific mysticism. I could just shorten it to mysticism. But Dr. Nasha talks openly in the conference was about this. There's, and certainly the keynote speaker, Dr. Zach Bush, of spirituality and science being, like there's they're just integrated, much like when and I'd be interested in this. I just naturally do. For some reason, I seem to have a developed corpus callosum, I think it is. I am left-handed. So so that's right-left hemisphere integration. And you didn't mention this as a mechanism, but any research, let's just go there. Scientific mysticism, I have a saying, if it isn't woo, is it even true? Because woo's just a term, and they want us to think woo's negative. I'm like, if it isn't woo, is it even true? So,
Yeah.
so my attitude is, what you talking about? That's not woo. That can't be true. But that's Larry's person, grounded in science. And there's this wonderful, like, I'm big into heart mind coherence. And now we have the Heart Mind, Institute. So we now know that there's 40,000 versions of neurons, and that the heart's electromagnetic field is bigger than the brain, and the heart does talk to the brain. So, y'all, everything that you ever heard as woo is being scientifically validated now. And our ancestors knew about quantum biology and quantum entanglement. We're just catching up to what Lao Tzu, just one example, knew 3,000 or 2,500 years ago. Anywho, you guys can explore that. Maybe I'll get a Taoist, I don't even know what they're called. Taoist teacher. I guess they're just called teachers, um, which is the root word of doctor, ironically. So, any research that you've come across of helping people become mind heart coherent and maybe growing the corpus callosum, if I'm getting that right, moving from this to me, curse of reductionist thinking, helping people to become more holistic thinkers, more system thinkers, more pattern makers?
Great question. So, as you mentioned, there are a lot of neurons. So, neurons are your brain cells, basically, but they're nervous system cells. A lot of them in your heart. We know this. And by the way, I kind of want to address the woo thing because we deal with a lot of people that feel like that I don't understand what that is. That sounds crazy to me. So that's why I lean heavily on the scientific part of it because the woo you will learn for yourself. I mean, the stuff that's inexplicable will come if you're open to it, and science is the basis for a lot of people just to dip their toe in.
I love that. Yeah. Fantastic.
So, I'm not disparaging at all. I just understand,
Yeah.
right? So I understand.
You're meeting people where they are, and that's lovely. And Dr. Nasha is great at that. And it's fantastic.
So, but the science, as you mentioned, it's there. So a lot of neurons in the area of the heart and a lot in the gut, right? So
Right.
we use whole organic mushrooms. There are a lot of fibers and beta glucans and things that feed your gut microbiota. So there's a constant communication between your gut and your brain, constant, and most of the information is coming from your gut. So your microbiome, your gut microbiome is often referred to as second brain. So you're also feeding all of the bugs with the fibrous parts of the mushrooms when you're using whole mushrooms. That's why we much prefer the use of the organic material rather than, synthesized small molecule, which most of the studies are using now. We can go into that later. But for absolute sure, this is a whole systems kind of approach. We are a whole system. We forget about that sometimes, but we're definitely a whole system. And as far as the psilocybin or the psilocin works in your brain, it's concentrated a lot in the prefrontal cortex. So you're getting a lot of growth there. And that's how you interpret the world, right? The corpus callosum attaches the two hemispheres. It's kind of a band that attaches the two hemispheres because you as a lefty, you tend to be more right brain dominant. I'm a righty. I tend to be more left brain dominant. So right brain is a more creative kind of approach typically. Left brain is more analytical typically. So, if you have a good connection, corpus callosum, and you are growing the creativity and the communications and the executive function in your brain, your whole system is improving and enhancing and expanding.
Thank you so much, Pam. That is mirroring what's great is I'm so new to this. So what you're describing, the mechanisms and the impacts on our nervous system, and thank you for bringing it down to the gut and the gut brain connection. And I'm also thankful for that facility in Nevada, and I've had nothing in these 3 weeks but a fantastic experience. One thing that has been a goal of mine, and I think a lot of people, and the word mindfulness and a lot of breathing techniques, they coalesce, a lot of practices coalesce around being present in our day-to-day life. Like there's a sacredness to almost everything we do, and so much more life in living if we're present. Like the present is the only reality and is a present. Ironically, the word present and being present. Have you found that's an additional gift of the mushrooms, helping people be more present and really experiencing, you know, same family, same job, same city, same circle of friends, but it being an enriched experience?
100%. Absolutely. So, whether it's described as presence, peace, clarity, there's definitely a sharpening of senses and purpose and
Mm.
patience. Yeah. Yes. It's
What
just a
about
simple answer
playfulness?
is yes.
Do people
Yeah.
get even sillier?
Yeah,
I've
because
gotten more playful. It's another P word, so I thought I'd.
because the mushrooms help you release the tension, the stress, the cycle of anxiety, or the wicked to-do list. Listen, I'm a victim of that too. My to-do list is awesome, but it's gonna be there. Why worry about it? Just work through it. So there is this presence and acceptance and peacefulness that
Hmm.
really comes with the microdosing. So, part of that is reducing the inflammation in your brain. Part of that is exercising these new pathways with the new connections and the new brain cells. So, our brains are so efficient. They use up so much energy, the body's energy. So the brain is always looking for this speediest way to accomplish something. So it's a really habitual organ. And if I always get anxious looking at my to-do list, right? That's what I'll keep doing. I'll go into this same response, same reaction all the time. With the mushrooms, you're actually starting to build new pathways and reduce all of that nervous, you know, tension, inflammation to allow yourself to process the same things from a different perspective, going down a different road. And the wellness sort of integration type of practices, whether it's breathing or meditation or just getting out in the sun the first thing in the morning or sitting on the grass, these very simple things can really reinforce those new pathways and your new way of responding to the same old nuisances. So, yes, for sure, you will feel more present and you'll feel more calm and more playful and just more at peace overall.
Yeah, it's really, this would be really metaphysical, but it's helping me bring out what's inside. Um,
Mhm.
Thankfully, that's been all good so far. Before we get to macro dosing, I do want to, you touched on this before, that your work with early dementia and Parkinson's, and in our conversation, you had mentioned, which I think's amazing, that you have Zoom calls on this. Part of me and Kaylin's journey, probably the saddest part, but it's something that we think both of our loved ones would be so happy that we started healing with the diamonds. My main caregiver, and definitely my father figure growing up, was my uncle, and he got severe Alzheimer's, and I was just not going to let that happen to me. And Kaylin's dad also dementia, and I haven't even mentioned this on social media anywhere, but he was put in a nursing home in 2020, and the timing, we couldn't see him. That was just, I'm very sorry for anyone that had a similar experience. So tell me about that, because we, as a species, as a collective, we want to minimize anyone else ever experiencing that in any family. So if you want to, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, as you might imagine, the mechanisms that we discussed with the reducing inflammation and growing actual new cells, new connections, you might imagine how that works with early onset Alzheimer's, dementia. It doesn't remove the tau proteins or the plaque buildup, but it does kind of offer a workaround. And really reducing the inflammation makes a huge difference both in mood and quality of life and memory also to some degree. It doesn't reverse the whole process entirely, clearly, but it does make a meaningful difference for these patients. Most of our patients, and they are referred over by a neurologist that is quite well aware of the research in this area, very well versed in the mechanisms. So he definitely understands how the mushrooms can help with these people. And They have been. They've absolutely been helping, and not only early Alzheimer's, the further along you get, the less you're gonna see, the impact, but really all the time with every single patient, because we really do keep track of these folks and wanna make sure that they're doing well, and if they have any questions, they're always answered, but what they'll initially see, because this is microdosing. So microdosing works over time. It's kind of a whisper in the background. Usually the spouse or the caregiver notices first, and usually within a few weeks. Oh, Frank is not so angry anymore. Oh, the
Uh,
household
no.
is so much more pleasant. There's not so much tension. And over a month or two, they start to say, oh, he's actually retaining new information that he's learning. He's not as forgetful as he is. It doesn't fix everything, but it does. The mechanisms do allow for improvement of the condition. I mean, Alzheimer's, like any chronic disease, as you were mentioning, genetics is not the only thing. Epigenetics is where it all happens, and that's influenced by everything we do. Everything we do as people, what we are eating, what we're drinking, what air we're breathing, the amount of exercise we get. So we really try to, once you're starting to feel a little bit of an improvement with the microdosing, we really encourage people to do other types of practices to help them sleep better, to help them eat a little bit better, to get more exercise, to be more engaged with themselves and the world and the ground and the air. So that's what you were mentioning, is that we do a monthly cognitive integration circle. And these are kind of the things that we do talk about. We try to give tips and tricks and techniques to help improve their life even more. And it's been working really well. Being more patients that are being referred over by the same neurologist for Parkinson's disease now too. So again, the mechanisms theoretically are working, should be working to make improvements. The research is in the early phases, but again, people see an improvement in attitude and emotional balance and lifestyle first. And then, over time, there is more improvement. We had now this is going to blow you away. So we had one gentleman that had TB, traumatic brain injury.
Mhm.
You'd think the mechanisms also would be very helpful for TBI. This poor guy, he's in his early or late 40s, I think, had a really dramatic accident, literally fell down concrete stairs and severed at C3. So he's a quadriplegic. You wake up and you're a quadriplegic. The poor guy was just devastated, as all of us would be, was feeling like he's at the end of my life now. Why don't you just put me in hospice? Was suicidal, basically. And the same neurologist said, this is not going to solve all your problems, but you might want to consider microdosing, at least for your disposition to help you accept your new body. So this gentleman, yeah, why not? Why not? I'm just sitting here anyway. So over the course of about 6 weeks, and not even a full box of pairings, he's feeling better, brighter. Within 2 months, we go down to visit him. This gentleman was quadriplegic. He was moving his toes.
Oh my.
The neurologist was like, wow, that's kind of amazing.
So the neurons all the way to, well, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I want
Right. I mean, theoretically, you're feeding food to your neurons. So, you're reconnecting things that were damaged. Theoretically, I mean, we can't dissect this poor man and see what happened to prove that exactly. But there is nothing else he was taking. I mean, I guess it's a possibility with the right attitude and physical therapy and the whatnots that he might have had some of this spontaneously. Attitude alone, huge. That he's seeing movement. He's actually out of the rehab facility and at home now, which they didn't think he'd be able to do at all. So, it's something. That this is still sits in Schedule 1 is crazy. But the thing to recognize too is, I mean, we have a few states and municipalities that have decriminalized psilocybin. but you have the unintended consequences of the bureaucracy, let's say. So in Oregon, and they're entirely decriminalized, but there's structure it's structured access, it's controlled access. So they charge for someone to sit with you on a microdose. Now, Larry, you know what a microdose does to your ability to function, and it's nothing. I mean, it's
Nothing,
working kind of
just
in the back.
enhances, yeah.
Right.
Literally, coffee is more mind altering than microdosing, and they don't have people sit with us when we take a cup of coffee.
Right. So, I guess they do it under a ridiculous abundance of caution. I mean, I love the safety factor. That's really supreme for us too. But the thing is that they charge to access a microdose amount, have somebody trained that sits with you for hours. And I mean, you can't do that as a microdose. You want to take this several times a week. You can't dedicate the time, never
Sorry,
mind the
I
expense.
shouldn't be laughing, but
Yeah, that's like $800 they charge for this, and that's just inaccessible to everybody. I mean, except for the very few, and it's impractical to 100% of people, and it's insane. So when you get bureaucracies involved, things go a little sideways. So this is really a nice aspect of this protected route that we decided to go down, is that we know how to be safe. We know how to make good product. We screen people, especially for macrodose. There are very few contraindications of using psilocybin, really very few, but we make sure they don't exist. We make sure people are in the proper state of mind, that you're not suicidal. You don't want to be in that state when you alter yourself. I'm talking macro now. So, I mean, as long as you're responsible, safe, and have enough information to make sure people will use this in a very responsible and respectful way, we can make it more affordable, right? We can make it more affordable. You get clean product. The governmental route, just despite
and
good
we're
intentions.
just so I'm clear, were you saying in Oregon, $800 for a single, say, zero point 0.2? Just
Yes.
one?
Yep. So less than 500 milligrams. So I think maybe they might do 300 milligrams of point 0.3. So
But
that's still
yeah,
in that
but
window.
just one of those? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you're like, I can't even do the math, but you're like 0.05% the cost, or that's cra
Right. So, I mean, the way we do it, it really is expensive to get the quality and the testing and the stuff, all of that. For nonprofit, I don't get paid. I don't pay myself. I pay my partner just to do medical intakes. I mean, and going to conferences real expensive. So, I mean, nobody's making no money. But for the $200 is what we request, the donation we request for a 2-month supply. All of the education that we offer are offered at no cost. We're a church.
well, I'm gonna start, it's funny, I don't wanna be a saint, I'm too feral to be a saint, but I'm gonna say Saint Pam.
Yeah.
But the beauty of the universe I found, and I think this is beautiful, that I call it casting our fate to the wind. If we don't expect anything in return for our goodness and love, then that's saint-like, even though I am totally not a saint. I will never be Saint Larry. That is not a goal of mine. So, and I do want to circle back because it's something very profound in our journey. I knew, as I've kind of manifested as being a healer, I knew Kaylin's dad was going to get dementia years before it happened. And what can happen to loved ones is they have passed a point of understanding, say, even taking coconut oil or low carb, high fat, or grounding or fasting, or all of these things that could avoid the dementia. So, what I think is so exciting is that if somebody is, and that happens, right? He could not understand. He was past the point of me or his daughter being able to understand these lifestyle interventions. So, just what you said, if you have these people at that stage, that they can start with the magic of the mushrooms, get to that point where they can understand that to actually avoid the dementia, they're going to have to go whole real food. They're going to have to start getting some sun, grounding, not eat continuously through the day. That's what I heard you saying, and that is super exciting because we knew what to do. He was living in a different state, though, and it was just heartbreaking to have this knowledge and not, and he had the ability to come live in our house, both him and my uncle, and they both decided not to. So that's pretty, thank you. I'll give you saint status just for that.
The reward to see what this beautiful substance, this beautiful mycelial network on the planet that was given to us by God, the universe, or whatever, however you'd like to look at it, to be able to work with us in a safe way and provide it to people who could really, really benefit, and we see it all the time, that's a blessing. That's a blessing.
Thank you. So let's talk macro dosing. And I'm open to that. Practically, I'm very glad that I'm, like you said, things happen when and where, if we're open, if our intent, I really think the universe, plasma, some people call it the womb, the Tao, source, I think works on intent. That's my personal lived experience. So, um, it is just perfect that I'm starting with microdosing. But who is macro dosing good for? Before I forget, after the macro dosing, I want to know if you have people that bounce around between your three varieties. That's a personal question I have for me. So, but talk about macro dosing. I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm guessing that people do micro and macro dosing as well. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about macro dosing and complementary, different, if some people just macro dose and so forth.
So just to kind of lay the groundwork so we all know what we're talking about, macrodose, you have a psychedelic experience. And I'll discuss what that kind of looks like. And it's different for different people. It's kind of hard to explain, but we'll go into it a little bit. So anything above 1 gram is typically, depending on the sensitivity of the person, you're going to feel some altered. So what is kind of considered a macro dose, but in a mini form, a very low dose, it would be like maybe a couple glasses of wine kind of state of alteration. That's maybe between 1 and 3 grams, depending on the individual. Midpoint macro dose, so that's more, okay, I want to sit on the grass and just experience this. This is really interesting. Between 3 and 5 grams, typically, that is sort of that midline. And then above 5 grams, you're kind of easing into a much bigger experience. So a hero
Hmm.
dose is probably over 7 or 8 grams. And that's definitely, you're going on a ride. So the mechanisms are the same, right? So microdose, you're just getting it in very small doses and getting all the benefits over time. With a macro dose, you're having a full-blown psychedelic experience. And what that can look like is some people see the fractals, they'll see the trees and the mountains breathing, you see faces or beings in the sky. So it's for most people that, and we really try to make sure that people are ready, even if they're nervous, but they're open. It really depends on the individual, and each journey is different, even with the same individual. And what it's doing is just giving your brain a big dose. So you're really opening up those neural pathways. You're interpreting things in a really different way. So there are very, very few contraindications to that kind of experience if you're interested. So, if you're a polypharma kind of psychiatric, we would really try to get you dialed down on your dosage, because at the very high If you're taking high dosages, multiple serotonin type of
Thank
medication,
you.
yeah, you can potentially have a risk of serotonin overload or serotonin syndrome, and that's a medical issue. We don't want to bring people there for sure. If you have a history of untreated bipolar disorder, psychosis, or on heavy duty lithium, that doesn't work so well with mushrooms, so that would be unsafe, and we would not allow for that. You can potentially dial back on the lithium, and if you've been very stable over time, we'd just be very careful and maybe take you on just as one person rather than in small group, which is more typical, and I'll talk about that in a second. And really, those are the big, red flags. If you have complex cardiovascular history, I would also be very cautious because large doses of psilocybin will elevate your blood pressure. We want to make sure that's really under control. But for the vast majority of people, this experience is incredibly safe, especially if you do it the way we do it. So, which is, it's typically a conversation initially. Why are you interested in a macrodose? What brings you to this? How do you feel about doing this? Have you had any experience? Of course, we talk about the medical things as well. If people want to continue down the road, we'll get them a really beautiful preparation and integration guide that they can start kind of writing what it is that I'm trying to explore, where it is I'm stuck, and what is my intention
Mm,
for doing this journey. So the idea of setting an intention for a macro journey, and you can do this with micro too, frankly. But the idea of setting an intention is to kind of get your brain in the neighborhood of what it is you would like to learn from your journey, because you're going to learn
mm,
something guaranteed. So if you kind of get your head into that neighborhood, it's going to be more likely that you're going to get the answers that you seek, even if they're not a direct answer. And I can give
mm.
some examples of that shortly. So they get their book, and then we mostly do these in small groups in doses of 3 to 4 grams. It's delivered in a tea. It's very nice. But the small groups are up to 6 people. And I told you, $800, right, in Oregon for a microdose. So this whole experience that I'm describing, we request a $500 donation. So we really try to keep it very modest, and we'll take payments because, man, if you need this stuff, we want to get it to you. So you get to meet everybody in the group. We provide the day of ceremony. We provide transportation from the Reno Sparks area, which is a town closest to me, bring you up to the ranch. That's my house. It's all very much set up for a lovely retreat experience. We begin in the teepee. It's gorgeous in there. I do a little stretching, a little meditation, intention discussion, and then you take your medicine in a beautiful tea. The experience itself lasts 3 to 4 hours, depending on the individual. You're absolutely welcome to stay in the teepee and lay down and put an eye mask on and earbuds in if that's what your preference is. That's how they do clinical trials. But I have a big property, and I have hanging chairs and couches and swing set and,
Well, I'd be outside wandering.
most people want to be outside and grounded, so you can wander around the property. I mean, it's pretty removed from civilization up here. It's our job to allow you, we call it free range tripping or free range journeying. You're going to know how to interact with mushrooms. It's not our business to direct you. We just want to make sure you're safe, you're comfortable, you're warm, you have water, you have your tissues. If you want to talk and interact, we're absolutely there. If you want to be left the hell alone with the grass, we will leave you alone. We'll just keep an eye on you. How you interact and what you experience is really the way you should do it. So once that journey is kind of, people are coming back into their regular daily selves, we have a big family style meal. We'll talk a little bit about the experience. People can do some journaling. We really discuss the importance of integration practices to keep those insights at the forefront of your mind for once you have a big dose, a macro journey. You're very neuroplastic for another 2 weeks or so. So it's a really good time to start integrating some practicing. some practices. So, the integration that we talked about, right? The breath work, the cold plunge, the grounding, the whatever it is. There are a million of them. And we teach to them, and then you build your toolbox. So for me, grounding, hot box or my infrared sauna and sunshine. There are certain, I have my set of tools that I use. My tools are not necessarily going to be your tools, Larry. Like my partner Leah loves the cold plunge. God love her. That's like torture for me. It's so good for you, but it's really hard for me. She loves
Love that. You're doing your practices. Yeah, it shouldn't be forced. So I love
everybody
that
has their own.
awareness.
Yeah. So that's what we kinda try to teach to. You're gonna know what you're gonna, be attracted by, what feels good for your body. Fasting for some people, I mean, my partner, he embraced fasting and a really clean, carnivorous diet and lost like 80 pounds. This is his toolbox, is that. So everyone's is a little bit different. We just see it as our job to expose people to the different tools, and you put the tools that you want in your belt. So then we'll bring you back to your place of origin, around 5 in the evening with a little goodie bag and dinner, so you don't have to worry about that. And about a week later, we do a virtual integration with just this group, see how people are doing, just offering support and community. And then we do ongoing integration circles and efforts and science and sermon projects and all of that throughout the month. So that's kind of the small group. With the individual, we will do individuals as well if they want to go on more of a hero's journey. We take only one person at a time for that just because it's a hero's journey. You might need a little more attention than otherwise. And that's also a little bit more customized. So I have a cold plunge here. We have a massage. We can do massage, craniosacral therapy, energy work. So we'll make the day really geared to the individual, but the process is the same.
Is beyond amazing. When we interviewed Dr. Nasha, she's like, "I guess you're coming to Tucson," and so I'm gonna tell Kaylin, "Guess we're going to Reno." And I don't know. So we talked about red flags. I don't know if you ever met Rob Wolf. He's in Montana, I believe now. He's big in the paleo movement, and he lived in Reno for a while. And he is passionate about helping service men and women and especially with PTSD. So, you talked red flags, but let's talk about green flags. People should look up Dr. Atkins and Air Force, or it might have been even before Dr. Atkins, but for Air Force pilots to fit into the cockpit, the Air Force found ketogenic diets. Surprise, it works in the real world no matter what they train, quote unquote, expert. We won't go there. But with your Air Force, have you seen in particular the heroic doses and or microdoses really helping with no medical advice? We have a disclaimer here, but with PTSD.
Absolutely. So trauma processing for sure. So I'm I have a warm spot in my heart for veterans. There
Mhm.
are a lot of, and we're actively involved with the VA and suicide prevention. I mean, they can't really recommend us because Schedule 1, but they allow us to participate and support people with, mindfulness practices, which also can very much help. And there are a lot of veterans that are just, $200 is way beyond what they just don't have the money. So we're just going now launching a scholarship program for veterans that could really benefit from the microdosing that just simply don't have the means. We have a beautiful Air Force veteran, that's not me, another gentleman that is, he has the means and he wants to do the good work. So we have a pilot that we're going to be starting early next year for those kind of folks. But yes, for sure, we're involved in first responders. They have a lot of trauma, military folks. For sure, it makes a gigantic difference. This is how I describe how mushrooms work, especially in macro dose, right? So the mechanisms are the same, just to repeat. Micro is just softer and it goes over time, but macro. So, macro, for someone that's suffering with trauma, and it doesn't have to be a military or first responder. I mean, we've had a bunch of people that just have sexual abuse trauma, just chronic trauma. And what happens is, when you're stuck in trauma, you're stuck. I mean, literally, it's like being in this shit river, right, Larry? That the turds are floating in your eyes and your ears, and you're up to your knees in the mud and the muck, and there's no way you can't get out. You're stuck. What the mushrooms do is take you out of the river and put you on the bank. So I can still
Wow.
see it. I can still see it's there. That trauma doesn't go away, but it's not mine anymore. It's not on my back. It's not my burden. It's just an experience. So you're able to reprocess how you look at, these experiences that were terrible and traumatic, but it just doesn't own you anymore. You're not stuck.
You're not the trauma any longer.
That's right. You're not part of it. It's not part of you. I mean, it's there. You know it's there. You can just process it now in a different way.
So eloquent. And thank you to that support. And I did not know about that. That's beautiful as well. So for me, I chose the lucid
Mhm.
variety. Now, I'm having a great experience. Would I necessarily? I felt drawn to all three, to be honest. I thought the lucid at the time was a good starter for me, but all three of those I feel call to me. So do you have people that switch among them, or would there even be people that have all three available to them and I'm doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Have you had people do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, all three?
Not all at once. So,
Okay.
yes, a lot of people are like, yeah, I could use all that. I'd like to be calm and I'd like to have focus. And I do have some trauma that I would like to process completely. So, in those cases, I'll typically say, what bothers you every day?
Mm.
Are you
Yep.
struggling with brain fog? And I'd like to be more clear because I need to have more clarity to focus in my day. And that's causing me a lot of stress. It's usually the first response. Or, I'm just completely stressed about everything. I'm very anxious. This is a symptom that bothers me. So, usually the first thing that comes to mind will pair you with the right pairing for that one. But yeah, for sure. And we typically will say, go through a box, see how it does for you. Because microdosing, regardless, it's that same dosage for the different pairings, but just see how this combination, these supportive botanicals, how your body functions with it. And because they're lower doses and it works over time to be fair and see how you respond to it, we recommend that you do one pairing at a time. Although we do have occasionally, like, uh, people that might do focus during the week, and then, 2 focus during the week and maybe 1 on the weekend of calm. So they take their calm supplement
Interesting.
on the weekend for relaxation, and then they'll shift more into the focus pairing during the week that when they need to be clearer. But typically, we'll have people do one pairing at a time, but there are a lot of folks that will kind of rotate through all three and say, you know what, I think I really like the focus, or I'm really at a place now that I'd like to do some more deep dive, soul searching trauma processing. So that's the introspection. Yes, answer is yes, people do different ones. Typically not together, though occasionally I've had a few people that prefer to do that, and many people will try different flavors.
I will take your wisdom.
Your body knows best, though. Your body knows better than I. It's just that the microdosing is soft and subtle, so to give it a fair chance. Does this make me feel really good? Is this working for me, this pairing? Yeah, the a 2-month cycle is really gonna give you that answer pretty clearly.
And to speak to the great quality of this product, as I was researching microdosing, most often the highest quality had niacin and lion's mane, and yours does. Can you talk about that research and why someone would want that with the psilocybin?
So, for in that particular case, now we're talking the focus pairing. So that's more of the
Okay.
cognitive clarity. So lion's mane we use in other pairings as well. Lion's mane is very cognitively focused. This is all of the products that we use are evidence-based. So there is scientific backing to be able to make these claims. So you're really looking at more cognitive clarity with the lion's mane. Niacin kind of opens your blood vessels and feeds the growth. So if you're familiar, and many people are who know anything about sort of the mushroom world, I suppose. Paul Stamets, his microdosing
Mm,
protocol
yes.
does use niacin. He uses much more niacin than we do. So ours is lower dose and it's a non-flushing form. So even though you're increasing your blood flow in your brain, it's done at a softer level so you don't feel the impact. You're not getting the flushing because some people like it, but many people are not comfortable with a higher level of niacin. But there is a physiological reason for it for sure.
Awesome. A follow-up that probably some listeners have. To do the macro dosing, it sounded amazing, beyond amazing. Thank you for literally opening your home to people. That is done only in person.
Yes, it's always done in person, and 95% of the time we do it here. I'm set up. I have everything here for folks. We do occasionally, however, take the show on the road, so to speak. Because we keep the cost very low, we do need to, if we're going somewhere, say, Larry, you have a group of friends and we would love to have a macro event in Austin, and I have a place that we could do it where people can be outside if they choose to be. We would work with you. We'd have to cover all our expenses, so it makes it a little more expensive to do a journey outside of the place where I already have all my things. But we have done it. We're open to doing it. It just ends up being a little bit more costly for the participants. And it's not quite as optimized usually just because, yeah, I have the optimal situation here.
If anyone is listening in Austin and you have some acreage, contact us. And thank you so much for your time. And speaking of contact, and your website is absolutely lovely.
Thank you.
Somebody's been listening. What would the process be? Because mine was a bit different since we met at a conference and I started that way. I am a church member now, but one of our audience members listening, they, I hope they're beyond intrigued now. Do your own research. What would the process look like for them?
So please visit the website. It's Setas Seminary, S like Sam, T like Tom, S like Sam, seminary.org. On the front end of the website, you might be able to read between the lines, but we certainly don't speak directly to psilocybin. I did that very deliberately because I do not want to attract the wrong people. But anyone can become a member. There's a little tab at the top that says become a member. It takes, 90 seconds to fill out the little form. You will get and it's free. There's no cost associated. You'll get an automated email that gives you credentials to get into the back end of the website or the member portal. So once you have your credentials, then you can log in as a member. And in the back end, you'll see all the research. So there are a lot of research papers. If you send me this or a link to this, I will post that up there. There's recommended reading, the latest research, and then a detailed description on the 3 pairings that we offer. Once you're a member, all adults in the United States, now this legislation is only US based. I do not send product outside of the US at all. But once you've become a member, then you're eligible to order or donate for pairings. You can do that directly from the member side of the website. If you're interested in macro experiences, we hold the small groups monthly, and those dates are on the website. I have to in the next few weeks, I'll have all next year's posted as well. So it's usually the 2nd Saturday of the month, typically for the small groups. If you wanted to do a single, more of a hero's journey, we schedule those as requested. If you were interested in doing a group, you had a group of people that and you'd like us to travel to you, you just contact me. The contact form comes directly to me, so everything flows through me, you'll be speaking to me. And we will we'll sort through that. So it's really everything starts at the website. Become a member. Membership is free. It protects all of us. So I can say as a church, I only share sacrament with members of my
Mm.
church who are using mushrooms in sincere spiritual practice. That's what the legislation says I can do. You can say I am part of this church. I'm a member of this church, and I use this substance as part of my spiritual practice. So we're all covered under this legislation. That's why you need to become a member first. But again, it takes a minute and a half. There's no cost associated. It's really just a protection mechanism.
Love it. And a selfish question for me, but I have about 5 more weeks in my supply. When should I order it? Typically, how long does it take to get to me so I don't have an interruption?
Yeah. So, I manage a small company, right? I get my hands in everything, Larry. Typically, I will get any request or donation for supplement out by the next day, often the same day. Everything goes out UPS ground. So depending on where you are, it could, if it's local over here, it's like 1 or 2 days. If I'm sending it across country, it's oftentimes 4 or 5 days. It depends on UPS because it's just not financially sound to do it expedited. It might cost more than the cost of the box itself.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Cannot ask for better than that. You mentioned Paul Stamets. Is there a book or, well, your site's amazing and you have so much there. It's fantastic. I was blown away by your site. It's so well done. So I would suggest Pam and Leia's site above all. But if people want a book maybe to listen to on Audible or read, do you have a book or two? And interestingly enough, I become a huge fan of Rupert Sheldrake. And of course, I think his two sons are Merlin and Cosmo, I think maybe. I can't remember the other. But Merlin wrote, and I listened to it on Audible, one of my favorite books in the last few years, Entangled Life. Now,
Mhm.
it didn't really I remember it just being just a great exploration of mushrooms in general, not focus on micro or macro dosing. I've just heard a lot of Paul on YouTube. I don't even know if he's written books, but
Oh, yes.
do you have a favorite book or two for people for Audible or good old fashioned actually reading?
Yep, I do. So on the member side, again, there's recommended reading. So we have a bunch of books back there. A couple of my favorites. Stamets has definitely written a bunch of books. For somebody kind of new to this whole space, I'd recommend Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. Fantastic book. That's really a great one. And just in a more kind of spiritual, not mushrooms at all. I'm a big fan of Alan Watts.
If it or not, me too.
Yes, I love him. He's probably my favorite. So you can find podcasts of his lectures that are lovely to listen to. He has a great delivery style and he's written a bunch of books. The Meaning of Happiness is fantastic. Another favorite is probably Aldous Huxley, Doors of Perception. Really great book. But there are a whole bunch of them back there on the member side of the site.
I am very hopeful, and I don't live in the past. So I was lucky enough maybe to be around your age and grow up in the 70s and actually grow up in LA, which was a trip in and of itself, but a very positive trip ultimately. But I'm not about, oh, the 70s are great and 2025 sucks, because where would that get us? So I'm very hopeful for both Gaia and humankind, and I think that people like you and Dr. Nation and everyone. I don't want to single one speaker out or one attendee out or one, business out at the conference. but that we're collectively raising the vibration of the planet. And everyone has a part to play. This is my version of namaste. My highest compliment is thank you for being you. I like to tell people that. So thank you for being you, Pam, and giving all of this. And you, I hope it reaches a lot of people, but even it's already impacting me. If just thank you for your time and thank you for starting this. Oh my gosh, yes. And so the best place would be to go to Setas Cemetery itself, .org.
Yep, seminary. Cemetery, I don't think you'll find us.
Seminary, did I say cemetery? If I did,
It's okay. But setas or setas is a Spanish
Setas.
word for mushroom, seminary.org.
Yeah, and we are recording this right before the Day of the Dead, so maybe that's why
Right, it was on your mind.
it was on. And that's the second podcast. Can this help us connect with our ancestors? So maybe that's why I said that. But that would be a wonderful part of. I haven't done that on microdosing per se, but I could see that happening with macrodosing for sure.
We've had people make a really astonishing connections. One in particular, since you brought it up, someone very, very close to her father, and she never mourned his passing, never. And that was not her intention for her journey, but her father was here in this valley. He was a horseman. There are horses all over the place. And she saw him and spoke to him and mourned his passing and knows that he's with her. Gives you the chills, doesn't it?
I actually got chill. I don't know if you could see them, but I just got chills all
Yeah,
over
me
my
too.
body when you said that.
So all
Beautiful
things are
chills.
possible.
I love that. Pam, have a wonderful rest of your day. Truly, thank you for being you. Thank you for coming up to that table at the conference. I'll be always grateful for that.
The magic mood rings are a great conversation starter.
Magic mood rings. I'm not sure they made it back to Austin, but the mushrooms did. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I so appreciate you having me. I so appreciate your interest, your great questions. And we are definitely here if you ever want to talk again. Again, my partner's a naturopath, and she could dive more into why she selected all the botanicals. And we love talking this kind of stuff. It's a blessing from God, the universe, or whatever. And we're so happy to be able to make it available to people who can really benefit.
Keep on keeping on.
Thanks so much, Larry.
Thank you much.